So you want to learn to make beautiful watercolor paintings and you're all excited about it, but then maybe you get out your paints and your brushes and you start trying it and it seems a lot harder than it actually looks. Well, I can completely relate. Before I was able to paint these types of beautiful watercolor paintings where I really understood how to leverage the water and the pigment ratios and could make it look exactly how I wanted it to look, I started at the beginning also, and I got so frustrated so often because it looked like it should be really easy to watercolor paint, and then in actual practicality, it wasn't. It was a lot harder than it looked. I would watch all sorts of online video tutorials, and while the videos were helpful and I could learn little tips and tricks from all of them, I didn't really feel like my watercolor skills were overall increasing and improving and that I was growing in confidence. So my secret weapon was watercolor step-by-step books. Now there are so many watercolor books out there and I have tried and tested most of them, at least the ones that are available in the United States. And I will say that they are not created equal. Some of them are a lot easier to follow and some of them are just not written for beginners, even if they say they're written for beginners. So if you want the easiest, most doable watercolor books to work with, I'm going to show you my absolute favorites here. I do think that one of the reasons why a lot of watercolor books aren't really great for beginners, even if they're written for beginners, is because the actual artists making them haven't been a beginner in a long time. So it's kind of like if you were to teach someone how to tie their shoes and you've been tying your shoes without even thinking about it for a lot of years. When you go to actually teach someone step by step how to tie your shoes, it could be really tricky and the person might not understand what you're trying to tell them. And that's exactly how a lot of watercolor books feel. I think there's big questions whenever you're starting something new, especially something like watercolor. There are so many different paints and papers and brushes and all sorts of different things that can affect the quality of your watercolor paintings turning out. While a lot of watercolor books cover these things at a high level and try to give you some basic instruction there, I find that there's often a gap between that high level instruction and the actual projects that they're having you do. But some books do get it right, and those are the ones that I'll be showing you today. So the two very, very best of all of the books I've ever seen and tried are these two, Watercolor Joy and Watercolor Nature. Both of these books are fantastic for a couple of reasons. First of all, they both use a limited color palette. So instead of tons and tons of colors to choose from, which is really overwhelming when you're a beginner, they both give you a few colors to work with or a smaller amount. I started with this book because this book had not yet come out, and this book calls for about 20 paint colors. And when you're working with step-by-step watercolor books, it will really mess you up if you're not using the exact paint colors that they're telling you to in the instructions. I thought that wouldn't be as big of a block as it was for me, but it was so frustrating, especially as the books try to teach you a little bit of color mixing, and when your color just doesn't even come close to the color in the book, it can be super frustrating. So I found for this book, I needed to buy about 20 tubes of paint to just even get started. While I love this book and I recommend it highly, I recommend to most beginners to start with this book instead. This book only requires 8 colors. That's it. And you can make all the projects in the book, and she has excellent step-by-step instruction, which I'll show you more in depth here in a second. Now, if you'd like more feel-good creative tips and ideas to spark your creativity and imagination, be sure to subscribe because that is exactly what my channel is all about, and I would love to cheer you on in your creative journey. This is Emma Bloch's book, The Joy of Watercolor, and let me show you a couple of reasons why I think it's such a great place, especially for beginners. First of all, you have a limited color palette. Now this is around 20 colors, so it's still a little bit more, and if this intimidates you, then I would recommend using the other book that has a lot fewer colors, but still this gives you a good balance of some warm colors and cool colors that you can do a lot of color mixing with, so it's fantastic that way. So her first section is all about painting flowers, and she's got this really simple project to get going. She always is saying at the top what kind of level it's at. She's telling you exactly what colors you'll need and what supplies. She gives really good instruction about what to expect with your paints and how to work with them and the colors. So that one only had one step. This project has more steps. So it starts here and then has 3 more steps until you're done. So these projects are so good to just really get you warmed up. And so far you'll see these are projects that don't use much drawing, because drawing can be really intimidating in the beginning as well. So then when we finally get to a piece like this, you'll see there is some very loose drawing if you wanted to just kind of roughly map out where everything is in the painting. You can see this is covered with paint splatters and paint because I've actively used this book while painting. This has a little bit more drawing in it. I was so panicked when I tried a lot of these. The drawings freaked me out the most, and you'll see this one is listed as intermediate because it involves drawing and because it has a few more layers. But when you break down the drawings, they really are so simple and doable that I think you can't go wrong. This project ended up being really simple and lovely. And she even has advanced projects in here, which involve a lot more layers and steps, like you can see here. It's just fantastic. So yeah, I would just go through and paint every single project, which was really helpful because otherwise I would have picked the ones that looked the easiest or gotten to the ones that were too hard, and then I would have lost my courage. So I really liked how these build up. Each section you have beginner, intermediate to advanced, and so each section kind of builds up your confidence before you go and do a new section. So like this bowl of fruit was a little bit trickier, but it was so fun to paint. So here is one of the projects, and then here is the painting that I did. So I think this is also a really good gauge of if it can look pretty close to the picture, I think it's a good tutorial. So you can see I was still pretty nervous about blending colors. I was hesitant with my paints, but ultimately I learned a lot from this little project. So here is this version of this project in my book. This was fun because it taught me to use masking fluid, which helps you to preserve the whites on your paper so you can just block it out. It's almost like glue. You just lay it down first, and once it dries, you can paint over the top of it, and then when your paint is dry, you can rub it off and your white paper is underneath. So little stuff like that was so helpful in the beginning because I didn't have a lot of experience with that, and so these simple little projects really built my confidence. This is one of the scarier projects that I did. I was so intimidated by all of this little tiny line work and the shadows and painting whites and how to make it work. But ultimately, you can see it turned out pretty dang good, and I learned so much. She has a whole section on painting food. So this was a really fun one. And here's how mine turned out in my notebook and my cupcake. They were so fun. Painting people can also be really scary in the beginning. So this was really helpful to help me get over some of that anxiety. The drawing is pretty simple. It was intimidating to me in the beginning, so you just take it slow, use your eraser a lot, and then step by step you build up this painting. What was fun about this is she had purposefully put these huge sunglasses on because it can be really intimidating to paint eyes and a full face when you're still learning what to do, and I loved that. I didn't use exactly the same colors as she had. My little cheeks bled a little bit more. They were too wet, and so they didn't quite turn out as cute as hers, but this was close enough that I started to see a vision of, oh my gosh, I think I can do this. I kind of made her nose funky, you can see, but it's still cute, still worked. This little advanced project was really intimidating at first glance, and I really stressed over that drawing, but then I saw it through, and it was such a good experience to learn from. She also has things like birds in here, which I loved painting. She also has some good landscape painting projects in here, which were so invaluable. In this book, you get a taste of a lot of different subjects to paint, which was just delightful. So I loved getting to practice some landscapes as well. And I hope what you're seeing as I'm showing the comparison with my work versus what's in the book is that it doesn't look exactly like the picture in the book, but they are close enough that you can see that I did learn the basic principles. I was able to learn a lot from the project and get it pretty dang close, which I think is such a win, especially when you're using step-by-step books. So I'm still very proud of this painting. It's so simple, but it was one of these moments in my painting path as a self-taught artist where I finally had some big hope. Oh my gosh, I think I can do this. In addition to the Joy of Watercolor book, Emma also has Watercolor Life, which is her second book, and it has got a lot of really fun, great projects in it too. So it's very similar to this one and has even more subjects to paint. So if you really like this, this is a great next step. I'll show you inside some of the paintings. Here we've got some seashells and we've got some beautiful florals. Some of these are really fun because she's teaching you a lot more with watercolor texture and blending than the first book, and layering. So I would definitely start with the other book, but then hopefully this gives you an idea of just some of the other fun projects that you can do. Here again with the same ease of that really simple step-by-step view and the limited color palette that her first book was so good for. This is my all-time favorite book to recommend to brand new watercolorists. Even if this doesn't really represent the art style that you're after, this book is invaluable for learning about color mixing and being able to create some really beautiful projects. One of the biggest reasons why I recommend this book is she only uses 8 paint colors. So 8 paint colors and you can paint the whole thing. You could just buy the tubes of those 8 colors and then you can buy empty paint tins. This is my little key that tells me what colors are being used. It's a mess because painting is messy and fun, but you'll see just even in this little tiny container, you can fit a lot of pans of watercolors. So you would just take your watercolor and squeeze in a dollop into each spot, and then you'd be able to paint any of the projects in this book. So I've helped a lot of people get started with painting by recommending using these 3 items of tubes, a little tiny paint palette, and then this book. And you'll see when you fold this paint palette up, it's really cute and small. This is just on Amazon. If you're curious, I'll put the link below. Another good option is this Winsor Newton little palette. I always draw and paint a little palette in here to tell me what the colors look like when they're painted. And so you've got plenty of space for mixing. And then in this palette, you have 12 colors and a little paint brush, which you can fill with water. So you can use this while you're out and about. This comes as a kit from Winsor Newton, but you can replace these so that your colors in your palette match the colors that are in the book. So you make sure you at least have these inside your palette, and then you'll be able to paint anything in the book too. So here's a snapshot of all of the paint projects that are inside the book at a glance. Now her style uses ink and watercolor for most of the projects, and I found that I actually really loved this. I did this book after I did The Joy of Watercolor, and so I had been used to not having outlines on anything, and this was fun to go back to having outlines because it helped me try some other kinds of projects and learn a little bit more and try this art style. So here's the daisy. You've got the 4 colors that you're using for this project. She has the actual reference photo here, which is invaluable. Most step-by-step watercolor books don't include a reference photo of what they're painting, and that can be kind of annoying because instead of you learning how you paint this, you're purely just copying that artist's style. And so at least with this book, you could look at, oh, why did she do it that way? Oh, and then you look at the reference photo and you can start to see why she put the shadows there, what she did. So the daisy, for sure, I was intimidated with all those petals. The first project in the book, and you're having me draw that much. But then she broke it down in a really simple way of just draw 2 circles and then just draw some petal shapes. And then she has you use your micron pen to then outline and draw in things. And she talks to you about how to do that in a way where it's not just one heavy outline, but where you're varying. If you've got heavy lines and lighter lines, then it looks a lot more natural. So that was a fun tip to learn. Then you start painting. So here is what mine turned out. I was thrilled with this. It was such a huge win. And you'll see that I like to put on the bottom of these what colors she had me mix, because I was also trying to really pay attention to the color mixing so that as I was mixing them up, I kept a record of what colors I used so that I was getting to know my colors better too. She's got a mushroom. I also love how big she has each of the steps. As a beginner, when you're trying to decipher the difference between a tiny image and a tiny image, which happens in a lot of step-by-step books, it's really frustrating and difficult. So the big imagery was very, very helpful. This was one of the most difficult projects in the whole book for me because of all the little tiny edges, but it was also, of course, then one of the most rewarding. So here's how my fiddlehead ferns turned out. Here's how my frog turned out. Here's how my owl turned out. Such a fun project. But the project I think I'm the most proud of in this entire book was my snail. I had so much fun painting this and was so excited about how it turned out. So here is one of my early watercolor paintings where I was really trying to make something very lovely. And it's not that it's bad, it's just that it doesn't have the same level of depth. But when I wanted to get better at more realistic painting, there was a lot to learn. For example, here are some of my early bears, especially where I was trying to play with blending colors. And here were some other tests with those bears, and I just kept practicing and playing with them, and doing these projects really started to build my confidence so that then I could paint a little bit more realistic and get it looking like this. But it's so valuable, I think, for everybody to see this is where it started and this is where it can go as you just stick with it and keep learning and keep practicing. This is another great book to consider, especially after you've played with watercolor a little bit more. Ohn Mar Win has a very loose, fluid style, and then she uses pen to enhance it. So it's a really fun art style. She's got these projects like for these gorgeous macaroons and this ice cream cone. And here is how my versions of those turned out, following those step by step. Looking back from where my art is now versus where it was here, I mean, this was 2 years ago. It's really humbling to see that I was following each of these steps so carefully. I was stressing about so many of the brush strokes. I needed to really walk through this and do the steps and do each of the projects so that I could build my confidence so my art could be more what it is now. I like the Beginner's Guide to Watercolor also quite a bit. I didn't do as many of these projects, but I think there's a lot of great ideas in here. She works a lot more with dropping in different colors while your paint is wet and getting some different textures that way, which was fun to try and play with more. And so here is my painting based off of what I was playing with and trying in here, and I took my own liberties and tried some other things as well. This is a newer book that I just found that I'm liking a lot. I would call this a more intermediate painting book. She definitely works to simplify things down and show you step by step, but you'll see even just in the rabbit, some of these differences are very, very subtle, and sometimes that can be tricky to be able to do well as a beginner. Like when the image doesn't change dramatically, it's just harder, but it is so totally doable. And I think these projects are beautiful. I love her painting style. And I think it's a great book also to learn from. I would just make sure and build your confidence first with some of the other books and then step into this book. These books by Harriet de Winton are beautiful books. And if you want to learn to paint more realistic and detailed watercolor paintings, I highly recommend them as a next step. The thing to know though is that more detailed realistic paintings have a lot more steps and definitely more drawing, but she does a great job of showing you the color palette over here, simplifying down the drawings, and then helping you walk through all of the steps. Now, this in my mind was so much easier than what it actually was in practicality. This took me a long time to work on this specific painting, but I was so happy with the results. So here is my tiger after I did it. Again, I'm so proud of this because it was such a labor of love to go through all of these steps and actually come out with something that looked pretty darn close to the actual piece that I was trying to paint. So in these books, she has a lot of different subjects to paint, I mean, look at the detail on that dragonfly wing. But I just think these books are really important to know about, because once you get out of that super simple beginner phase, you're ready. You want something that's a little bit more advanced to try. At least in my experience, you're ready for it. So this toucan was another fun project that had a lot of steps. I mean, just look at, you've got 2 full big steps on just the beak alone, and then you're moving through painting the wings and feathers. And then here is how my toucan turned out. Looks like I did this one about 3 years ago from the time of filming. So these were really invaluable to learn from and to practice taking my skills even farther than where I had been before. I highly recommend these books, and also just get them and start them when you're genuinely ready for a lot more detailed, even tedious kinds of painting. And some of you may never want that. You might just want to stay painting the light and loose styles, and that's great. That's totally fine. But if you ever want to take it further, more realistic, you've got options. This is a great place to go. Creative Portraits in Watercolor by Santos was a really great book that helped build my confidence in painting skin tones and faces. She also starts with some good drawing ideas to simplify the face a lot, which still requires a lot of practice. But then you start to get these step-by-step projects for portraits, and she tries to show you a couple different styles. So this is a more loose style. This is more abstract kind of styles. And then you've got some of these more artistic looking styles of portraiture. But the way she broke it down really, really worked for my brain and helped me to be able to start painting portraits a little more confidently. And she also has very realistic drawings in here as well, and paintings that you can follow using pen or not. But yeah, really nice techniques. I highly recommend this book. These are some of the projects that I started after playing with some of the exercises in here, where I was taking photos of actual people and I was trying to practice painting their faces. And you can see by this point, this was 2023, that my confidence was growing a lot. But I just think it's really invaluable for you to see just where the progress goes as you just keep sticking with it. Like, I didn't start painting portraits thinking I could paint these, but then step by step and by following a lot of these books, they helped so much. So I hope you found some inspiration amidst those watercolor books. They are fantastic, and their step-by-step projects are so fun. So I think you'll really enjoy it. Also, just a quick reminder that these are my 2 favorite books. So if you're getting overwhelmed, go for one of these, and probably this one first, followed by this one. They are both fantastic, and they will not do you wrong. I really recommend that you start in the beginning of one of these books, choose just one, and go through each of the projects step by step, because you're going to find your skills growing much faster as a result, instead of just kind of picking and choosing and hopping around. You'll also find that some of the projects might feel a little bit overwhelming, while others will feel a lot more fun. And so just getting to know what feels good to you and stretching yourself in some ways can be really valuable as well. Be sure to like and subscribe to this video if you got some value out of it, and if you'd like to see more creative content like this. And know that I am cheering you on in your creative journey. I'm excited to see what you create, and definitely let me know in the comments if you're going to try any of these books, or if you've tried other books that you've really liked and had a good experience with.